This week, we have something a little different for you here at the Laramy-K Optician Works Training Center. In our first ever interview segment, we sit down and talk with optician, craftsman, and business owner Kevin Count. You may remember Kevin from the acetate frame making video that we just released. In working with Kevin on that project, we realized that he had a lot more to offer. So we decided to sit down and have a chat on camera. In this interview, Kevin talks about his journey as an optician, how he got into handcrafting frames, the impact it has on his business, and what the future may hold. It's an enlightening discussion with lots of valuable takeaways. I think Kevin really embodies what I am always talking about here in the training center: never stop learning. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Kevin Count. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for returning this morning and doing this.
Well, happy to do it. Thanks, John.
I mean, what other question could we start with? How did you end up becoming an optician? You knew that was coming.
I did. I knew that was coming. You know, it's a good question. It's a good place to start. So when I was 17 in high school, and this is not heroic in any way. I was not a good student, and the way to get out of school early was to get a job. And so I joined a class, and part of the thing was you have to get a job, and they got me a position at iLab. Oh, yeah. Which is, you know, long since gone. Mm-hmm. But when I got there, everything just fell into place. Started working there and continued working there for another 2 years. And really, for whatever reason, everything made sense from day one. You know, this is a frame. This is how we take measurements. This is how you fit a person, and so on. So I went from being in sales to being in dispensing pretty quick because they saw that, you know, I'd probably do better over there. And so, yeah, that was the launch of it. It was really just like a lot of people. You start off in a chain someplace and you bumble through it. But for whatever reason, it just stuck.
Who did you start working under? Did you have someone that you kind of gave you some guidance along the way, or school, or did you just literally just learn on the job?
So in Illinois is a non-licensing state, and there really is no education available in that part of the U.S. But so yeah, you simply get a job and start learning. I was very fortunate. I very quickly got a job with a master optician who was very much devoted to the craft, and he was in a quirky space. He had a retail front, but in the back he was making prescription dive masks. Whoa! So, which is a very strange,
tricky stuff to do.
And to be honest with you, that's where I started to really cut my teeth in opticianry.
Cut lenses.
Glass lenses with plano front. So, yeah, you learn quick, you know, what you should and should not do. Plus, on the other side, we had regular optics out front. That was a pivotal moment, really, and that's where it went from being a job to, well, this may actually end up being a career. And so we just went deeper and deeper, and he pushed me towards certification and such.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, really brief sidestep, when he's talking about dive masks, that's working with glass, there's a ton of hands-on work on those, especially back in the day, so to speak. So, yeah, I'm sure that was a pretty steep learning curve, but obviously you nailed it.
Yeah, we were doing things. I'm sure Laramy-K still does this, but we don't. But at that period, we were cutting our own tools because you just needed wacky curvatures. You needed something that had a negative and a concave and convex surface on one side of the lens. So, and that gets tricky.
Yeah, and you're doing all those hand calculations and all. So,
it was good. It was a good place to be.
You came here to do a workshop on making a frame from scratch, which we accomplished. I just can't get over how amazing that is. How did you end up getting there?
So when I started in 17, and by the time I was 20, I was under a master optician. And I would be there for a few years, and then I went off and I started working other places. I was in different states. I was like a sponge. I was trying to pick up as much as I could, as many other places I could. And I worked, and to be honest with you, I left opticianing for a period.
Yes,
a lot of people I think do. But it's almost like the Al Capone movie, where I keep trying to leave, but they keep drawing me back in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people resonate with that. I think a lot of people can say, I've seen people say it.
And just when I thought I was out, they pull you back in.
So I actually got myself over onto the ophthalmic tech side.
Oh.
So doing refractions for ophthalmologists, and because I was wanting to learn that. How does that work? Because as an optician, that would be nice to know.
Yeah.
And so I'd gotten to a point in my career, I had gotten all the certifications I could get. I'd opened my own office. I started a wholesale lab and actually opened it and shut it down in the same year, because that's not a place you should go if you don't know that side of the business. You should probably leave it alone. But I was kind of at the end. I didn't know where to go. And it just so happened a client walked in with a broken frame. I committed to fixing it. I realized that I'd gotten myself into the weeds. It was a frame. I thought it was acetate, and it wasn't. And if anyone has ever done a frame repair on acetate, it's a relatively simple process. And I'm sure at some point in time you'll do a whole thing on this.
Yeah.
But if it's not acetate, all the steps you're doing won't work. But I was committed, and so I committed that in that moment. I'm going to build a new earpiece. Sourced materials, built the piece. It's not pretty. It's done. It's workable. It's out in the world. But that set me off on, well, how do you build a frame? And so that journey of how do you build a frame? Well, you would need to get these tools. You start logically breaking down the question. And at some point in time, my wife said, well, before you go too far down this rabbit hole, is there formal training? And as an optician in America, 30 years of experience, I said, no, there's no such thing as this. Not here.
No.
And her comment was, will it exist somewhere? Go find it. And that's what led me out to get to France.
We learned a little bit about your journey to France when we were doing the workshop, so people have a little idea of what happened there. Tell us a little bit more about that. And you had a very interesting story about your last name, France, and frame making.
Yes. So to start off with the place, to do this, you have to, if you want to get the training, formal training in doing this, there is a group of people in France, and they are, it's in French, but it breaks roughly into English as Master Craftsman of France in eyewear making. So in France, almost every discipline you can imagine has a master.
The old guild system.
Yes, exactly right. And it's actually, you could see them here in America, especially in culinary, in candy. Right. Yep. If you see a man wearing, or a woman for that, wearing a collar that has the French flag on it, they probably have already received their master's designation. That's where you see it. So there's a town called Moray, and in the mid 1800s or late 1700s, I'd have to go back and double check. Their frame making as we know it today, in the industry as we know it today, was born. And these are farmers who are subsistence farmers. In the winter, they really don't know what to do. To give you an idea of the quality of life, their houses are set up so that the barn is on one side. There's a hallway. There's a workshop and kitchen on the other side. And the living quarters are above it because it'll be warmed by the kitchen and the animals.
Right. Very practical.
Yes, very practical. So in the winter, these people hammer nails. They create nails out of just raw material. Somebody somewhere hammered a wire, wrapped that wire around the lens, and made glasses. Most likely because they were having problems.
Necessity, mother.
Exactly. So if you go there are all these manufacturers there, but there is this school, and it's the Master Craftsman, and it was set up because they realized that the craft was being lost. I had reached out to them and said, hey, I'm interested. And they came back to me almost immediately and said, if you can be here in February, and I'm going to give you an idea. It's November. And I said, great. What kind of cost are we talking? And the number that came back is one that brings pause. And so my wife and I went back and forth, back and forth. Over Christmas, we booked a hotel room, sent the deposit. We got everything set. Off we went. And so you go to Moray. There are master craftsmen. There are 6 people in the classroom. I don't speak French. My instructor is a man named Alain Clerc. He goes by the nickname Toy. Nobody tells me why his name Toy. He keeps telling me, I'll tell you later. So there's a story.
We just didn't get it.
I didn't get it. I didn't want it. So we're sitting there we're having coffee on our very first day. And there's one other person in the classroom who speaks Italian and broken French. And so they've brought in a translator. The translator's name is Andy. He's an Irishman who now lives in this area, and he has a business doing translation for the optical industry. We're sitting there. Elaine looks at me, and he says, "You have a strange last name." I said, "Well, Count's not the most common name, certainly, but it's not the original name. The original name is Comtois. My great-grandfather came down from French Canada. When he crossed the border, the name was changed, which was common in the day."
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He looks at me, and he says, "Comtois." His eyes get big as plates. I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're from here." I look, "What?" "No, to have the name Comtois, you have to come from this area." And he takes this pause, puts on a cigarette, "Welcome home." And that was the realization of, whoa, wait a second. To drive the point home, so that would have been Monday. On Wednesday, we go to lunch. They take me to a place, and it's called Taverne Comtois. And so I kind of went, you guys are having a laugh. No, it was a moment. And
this was in your blood for real.
Apparently there's a reason why I came easy.
Your true destiny.
I guess so.
That is cool. I certainly know what the experience was like yesterday. I tallied it up. We put an extraordinarily honest 8 solid hours of work to create this. Your experience in France was, you said, 10-hour days. Tell us a little bit about what that day was like.
So every morning you wake up about 7 o'clock in the morning. The town of Moray is very industrial. There are people who live around Moray. People don't necessarily live in Moray. There are people, obviously, that do. When you stand there on a street and you're looking down the street, you're going, "Yeah, I'm not going anymore." And so it sits at the bottom of a valley. Okay. But I didn't stay there. Andy had coached me ahead of time. He said, "If you're bringing your wife and there's no way you come home and say, 'Honey, I'm going to spend 10 days in France. I'll see you when I get back.' That doesn't work." So obviously my wife came with me. So we stayed in a ski village, which is on the top of the mountain, and that's called La Rousse. So every morning I wake up in La Rousse. I go down. I have my coffee, cafe, looking out this beautiful window out, down the street into this beautiful scene. Suck down my quick coffee, hop in the car. I drive down the mountain into the valley, and you start your day. You get into class, you hang up your jacket, you sit down, you're at a table, and we're going to begin. The very first day, they walk through the general concepts of the homework I gave you, which was how do you take a picture, how do you size it, how do you draw a frame. Okay, that's our beginning, and then much in the same way we did. Here's a piece of plastic, and now let's walk through this. And so you spend your day going piece by piece by piece. At the same time, there's a whiteboard, and you learn. Okay, now we're going to do a box. We're going to do the technical drawing, which we didn't really get into, but the technical drawing, which for our purposes wasn't really necessary. But you build a technical drawing, and you learn an interesting tidbit. The boxing system that we use in the U.S. was not used in Europe. It was forced onto the manufacturers. So they based everything off the datum line. So you learn about that, and how do you build a frame? Why is the top of the frame thicker than the bottom of the frame? Shapes, why certain shapes are better than others for women or men, and you build a piece. with a saw. They literally hand you this piece of plastic and a saw.
There's bring that back out. Yeah, there we go.
They hand you, so you choose your plastic, and you sit down with it. You have great hopes for this, and you're surrounded by equipment. I mean, there's a lot of equipment around you, and in your mind, you're like, "This is gonna be so great. I'm going to use that thing over there, and it looks really cool." And then they hand you a saw, and they say, "Okay, now cut it." And so you spend your first day, and you go through the process we went through. We're going to build a frame. And so that was every morning you sat down and they said, okay, the first day was what we did. And then the subsequent days are, okay, so now how do we take this into a duplicatable product?
Okay.
And that was, so the first day was really, let's build a frame. Let's get past this point. And my first frame is the goofiest looking thing. My hinges are everywhere. And so because you really don't know. Obviously, pieces after that got better. And so that's your day. You wake up and then noon comes around, and this was a shock for me the first day. Noon comes around, okay, everybody stop, we have to go to lunch. And I'm like, no, I'm an American. You don't understand. I work through lunch. No. And they're like, no, put it down. We're all leaving. And you leave for 2 hours. And then you come back.
Have a proper lunch.
A proper 2-hour lunch with wine. And then you come back to work and let's play with power tools.
You're there.
But then you're there until 6 o'clock at night. And then, you finish your day, everyone, okay, we'll see everybody tomorrow. You go off, you have your dinner. The next morning, rinse and repeat, and we're going to do this again.
Yeah.
And the second day, we're going to talk about the instruments, the power tools we have around us, the routers, the this, the that. Interestingly enough, they had a CNC there. It was not part of my course. We're not talking about that. We're making things. You will use power tools, but everything's with our hand only. So, but that was our day. It became interesting because as we're going through this, and as things are being discussed, and as we're on whiteboard, it was me at 17. Oh, well, of course. Well, that makes sense. Well, of course we do it this way. It was that all over again.
There's so much there. My mind's just full. I have questions, and there are some little things that we talked about in frame design. We were talking about hollowing out the back for frame curvature, and there's so much here. Right? We just can't. We can't get it all. But the 10-hour day immersion thing, that's kind of a common technique in education. Total immersion. That's why they'll isolate people when they're in conferences for those kinds of things, and kind of like you want to be in that closed environment, just focused on that one thing,
right.
and so. You learned the techniques. You earned your certification. You obviously are doing some amazing things. How has that changed your business? How do you work this into Kevin Count Eyewear now? So
I came back and I asked around. I actually went to the industry forums, like on Facebook, ODs on Facebook, Opticians, all these different groups, and asked the question. I want to do this. Does anybody know sources of materials and supply? And the answer was crickets.
Certainly not a surprise there. I don't even remember exactly how we connected, but I think somebody had posted a question about where do I learn it or where do I get sheet or something like that. And I think you were the only person that popped up and said, well, you could try here. Right. I said, oh, the one guy who's actually doing it, not talking about it. And that's how we connected. So I kind of interrupted you there, talking about how you're putting this into your own business plan.
Yeah, we get no response. You're on your own. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm an island. Mm-hmm. How do I live on my island? So you quickly figure out, okay, so who makes acetate? Well, in the industry, we all know Mazzucchelli. So I went to their website and I simply said, hey, I'm in the U.S. How do I get a hold of this? And they were like, oh, we have a U.S. rep. But the reality is, if you want to do this, you reach out to the companies and you say, hey, I'm someone who's doing this. I'm in the U.S. I'm never going to be a high volume guy, but I would like to buy your products. Yeah. And the funny thing is these companies are willing to work with you.
Yeah, they all came through. Yeah, in the end.
Yeah, in the end, everyone comes through. Yeah. There are secondary markets you can go to, but when you get online, you find out that although this is unheard of in the U.S., Europe, especially in French countries, this is common.
Yeah, the hinge kit that we used in the workshop that came through Sios, which is just a piece of center steel, which is Italy, where, of course, after France, the kind of frame building it was born, and that's the only reason it's sourced from there, and that we could get our hands on it, really. So
I'll give you a fun tidbit about that. So in France, there's a piece of equipment that I learned on, a router, and it is a very compact, efficient little machine, cast iron top. And you actually there's a router bit, and it's fed off a belt that the motor sits behind, and you're basically taking the plastic and you're feeding it into this router, right? And the way they did it in France was that they would make templates, and they would attach a template to the top, and one follows the other. Okay, that happened in this tiny little town in France. Okay, but the same general environment existed in Italy in the Dolomites. Their answer to that same question was not to stack pieces up on each other. It was to take a template and put it behind this, and it became a Panta router. Right. And they're still on the market. There are still companies out there who run completely off of this old technology, and it's very efficient. So the industry, it starts in France. Italy picks it up. France was the dominant factor for centuries, really, until Luxottica really just dominated everything.
We had talked while we were working on this stuff how closely woodworking stuff is to this. Yeah. So many of the techniques, the routing, the templates, the jigs, all that kind of stuff.
There was that moment in France, standing there with Toy, looking at all the equipment, going, wait.
I know some of this. I
can get all this at home, except for that one router. But when I came back, we sourced material, we found hinges, we found the wire cores that go in the hinge, and I set about putting together my workshop. And my thought was, I'm going to do the French model. I'm going to follow this way of doing it. The reality is, you will shorten your life drastically if you try to use a woodworking router. The router they were using.
That's a little overkill there.
So that quickly got abandoned. I went back to just using the very first 6 frames I ever made. And the first like 3 commissions were all done with a saw. A handsaw, files, and I spent days filing, sanding.
This was 8 hours, and at least 16 on top of that.
To take a typical piece, it's a week.
Yeah, I would think.
You would spend a week, because I didn't have full 8-hour days. I was doing it in between people that I'm seeing. But they became the thing. And when I finally got to a point that I said, I'm going to commission this, I started talking about it in my office. I had to stop talking about it. Because I took in too many jobs, and I knew I was going to have a problem. So I stopped taking anything for a year. And I said, I need to set up all of my systems. And so I finished the commissions I had, I set up my systems, I figured out how to do this. And meanwhile, I'm practicing and making and doing it again and again and again. So now I'm a couple dozen frames out. And now we come to it, and now I go, oh, I can do this. And there's that transformative moment again, where there's a piece I've worked on just recently, and it's now I'm into buffalo horn. I'm working in buffalo horn, and I finished the front, and I looked at it and went, I can do this. This is good. This is the real deal. This isn't me just noodling around anymore. And that moment was, and that's just a recent moment where I went, oh, but wait, I can do this.
Take me a little bit through, we talked about this just a little bit in the video, and of course my homework kind of touched on this a little bit, I think, but a little more of maybe role play a little bit with me, the process of if I came in and I wanted you to, what would be commissioned? I would commission you to make a piece like this for me. Take us through just a little bit of that.
Sure. So the way that usually starts, I usually have my equipment already set up in my office, and that usually starts this conversation. And so what are we doing? We make frames, and I have samples of all the materials and colors that I make. And usually people start flipping through that, and because who sees this? So that starts this conversation, and once we get to the point of I want this, so then it becomes okay, John. So give me an idea. I want to talk about a frame. Okay. Is there a theme we're looking for? Are there things that you want Is there architecture in the city or something that you've seen that you like? Hey, I really like this, or I like that, or I'm a big fan of that very stark linear lines in a building. So I'm a fan of very simplistic concepts or whatever that might be for you.
Gotcha.
And we're actually sitting down, and as we're having this conversation, I have a sketch pad in front of me. There was a gentleman recently who came in and said, "I'm a big Cubs fan."
Imagine that in Chicago.
Imagine that on the north side of Chicago to boot. And so we started sketching out concepts. I said, "Well, what are iconic things to the Cubs?" Well, and we went through a couple of iterations of this, just sketching things out. The original idea was the earpiece was going to be a baseball bat, and then we decided that wasn't going to work. Maybe it'll have a baseball on it. Well, no, that's not. We don't like that either. So it's a back and forth between the two of us as we're deciding this. Once we have a rough idea, and it's a mess right now. It's thoughts and ideas. Then we're going to take some measurements. During our video, we really didn't get into this, but there's a series of measurements I'm going to take. I want your PD, okay? Because that's my scale for making any frame.
Which we did my homework,
Which part of your homework. I'm going to measure a couple points on your head. I'm going to measure your temples and then right above your ears. Okay.
Which are not always the same.
Not always the same. I'm also going to measure the length from the front of a frame to the top of your ear on both sides, because as opticians, we know that we can be asymmetric up and down, but we're also asymmetric forward and back. And so we need that. And once I have that data, okay, now I can get into some design work. I do some design on paper. I do most of my design on the computer.
In what program you use?
I use Adobe Illustrator. Okay. So I have their whole suite. It's relatively easy to get a hold of today. And so I will start designing pieces in that. And if anyone's ever dealt with Illustrator before, you create layers, and you can make layers appear and disappear as you want. And so when I'm doing this, each layer is a design concept. And I'll do very simplistic. I do a piece that I would like. Maybe they don't, but I think this would look good on you, so I'll do that. I usually have some whimsical thing that's just, this is going to be a stretch for this person, but I'm going to present it because maybe we're going to train for something. And usually 4 or 5 of those, we create templates, we come back, we select. We then, at this moment, we're going to select material, color. And once we're at that point, I'm going to build it. There's going to be one more visit, and that's where it's nearing completion. Okay, it's basically just before where this frame sits now, and we're going to try it on, and I'm going to look at how it's fitting, and I'm going to make some adjustments to the frame. I'm going to go back, and I'll make those adjustments. It'll go through final polishing. Everything is set. You then come in. By the way, in that moment when we're making adjustments, I'm mostly going to take measurements for lenses. I'll finish the frame. The lenses are mounted. We come back, final fitting, and we're done. And then, what's your next piece going to be?
Set them up for the next one.
Yeah.
Can you talk about money a little bit? I'm not sure. Like I say, there's certainly a proprietary level to all of this, and finances, and the most broad terms. If you're talking about a week process plus the knowledge that you had to accumulate, art versus pushing a button. In your own words, how would you put charging appropriately, shall we say?
Right. That's hard. That's right. The very first pieces I made, I charged the I'm learning price. Okay, so they were $300 or $400 frames, and I was happy to get that because I was still learning and I knew that there was going to be a curve to this.
Right.
The timeline to do this is 6 to 8 weeks for me to go through and to do this process. Most of that is because I need to schedule it into the process because I'm not working on just yours. I have other ones I'm working on. Yeah. So there are ones in front of you and behind you. There are natural breakpoints when we make a frame that I need to wait for something to happen. usually curing of acetate. Price-wise, today, if you walk in my office and you say, I want to buy this frame, and this is pretty easy for me to make. This is $500. Okay. If you said, I want to have this frame, but I want it in buffalo horn, that's $1,000.
Right.
Okay. Right. And people say, why is it twice as much? And the reason it's twice as much is at any point during the process, I may have to start all over again.
Right. Yes.
Even though someone said, well, you have to start all over here, buffalo horn does weird things.
Yeah.
I can predict this. If you want a buffalo horn, it's going to cost more.
Touching on that just a little bit, you didn't always offer this. You mentioned yourself as we were talking, you'd kind of come to a crossroads, shall we say. Right. You chose to continue down the opticianry path. You added the art piece. What has it done for not only your business, but I guess maybe your business philosophy, maybe even a little bit?
Right. Once you go down this rabbit hole, it's definitely a rabbit hole. First off, what I noticed when I came back, my approach to dispensing eyewear had changed. I was no longer, especially when it came to an acetate frame, even when off the board, I was no longer looking at it going, that's a good size, it's a good shape. I was looking at it going, that bridge isn't quite right, but I can modify that a little bit. I can make adjustments to this to make it really fit well for you. Frames were coming in that people wanted lenses into. I was taking those and I was going back to the polishing wheel with them. So when they came back to them, they looked like they were brand new.
Nice.
This changed the office. It changed the office two ways. First off, I was presenting people back with their glasses, their old frames, and they looked better. And they liked that. And that was, oh, you've done something different. I wasn't just selling a frame. I wasn't just selling something that they could buy everywhere else. I was selling this service, and I was selling an attention to a detail. I went from being a run-of-the-mill office that, I think every office has the same problem. How do you differentiate? To somebody who's doing something different. And this was even before I was really making the frames. I was still trying to put together a workshop. But I changed my attitude. I don't allow any insurance on this.
Right. No.
I refuse to. Somebody comes in and says, hey, I have VSP. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't have this. No. I charge a premium for it. And I'll be honest with you, I have people who have told me, you charge too little. And that the price will go up as my clientele increases. It's altered the fact that I can ask these premium prices. My lens prices are higher than they used to be. Even the frames on my board have changed because my desire for frames has changed. I refuse to carry run-of-the-mill stuff. If it's within a few blocks of me, I'm not going to carry it anymore. Frame making has changed my philosophy of how an office can be, should be, and will be. Everyone's trying to get off of insurance today.
I was just going to pick up on that. I was waiting. Especially today. I mean, the internet, the optical world is a buzz with VSP opening their stores. Literally this week or the Friday last week that broke. And you're saying here, here's a product that has no connection to insurance whatsoever, and your product value is slowly increasing.
But you can't showroom me.
I mean, that's fantastic.
You can't walk in and say, but John, I can buy this online for $24. And I'll sit there and go, there's a movement going on. It's called the maker movement. And I think people are coming back to this concept. I know I am in my own life. I know a lot of my friends are doing this. They don't want to go to the big box. And they don't want to buy the widget that's in the packaging that everyone can have. They're sitting there going, I want something that somebody has spent time on. I want something that has a touch to it. And I'm willing to pay for that.
And there's the key. And there's people willing to pay for things that are custom, bespoke, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And talking about bespoke, I've taken this statement, handmade. Okay. Bespoke is this catchphrase for a lot of frames that are custom fitted. We're going to take this piece off the board, we'll make some modifications, and here it is. Mine is, let's build something out of it.
Big difference.
It's a big difference.
Yes, indeed. This all ties back around to Keith's newsletter, most of all, really. And that's another reason I think that we connected, retail success. keep going with that theme a little bit. How your customer, your clientele, your business base, how did that change as you added this to it?
My customer base is becoming more and more affluent. I'm not forcing anyone out. First off, because this is a moment of self-attrition for my clientele. My inventory of frames that I just carry on the wall has changed. I carry more unique lines. I prefer to carry lines that you can't find very easily.
What's your favorites? What do you like out there?
Right now, I'm liking Urkers, who's a group out of St. Louis.
Okay.
And they're being made, they're supposedly being made right there in St. Louis. I'm liking a line called OWP, which is out of Germany.
I have heard of that.
Yeah, and they have a few sublines underneath them. Obviously, my heart is in Moray.
Right.
So Morel, I love Morel.
All right.
There is a line I'm looking at called Factory Lunettes, but they're not really in the U.S. And so I'm finding myself looking beyond the borders to find products that are going to be outside of things you can find.
Sorry, you were talking about clientele, and I got you off on frames.
No. But my clientele is becoming more affluent. We have the cooler full of water in my office, but in the bottom of that cooler we have wine. There's prosecco. There's some beers down there. I think there's a vodka mule in there. So when the people walk in, we're addressing them by name. I already know they're coming in. Okay, we're moving to an appointment only schedule. Yeah. I know at 2 o'clock Mrs. Smith is going to show up, and I know at 2:30 Mr. Jones will show up. Okay, that was hard.
Yeah, I would imagine,
and it is hard to do this because I'm waiting for people to just show.
Yeah.
The response from people is very different. I've had to, as in you mentioned Keith's newsletter.
Yeah.
He had a bit about having 2 websites.
Right.
I have 2 websites. I have one that is the office, and I have one that is the eyewear. I had to go back and recreate the office one. It was the cookie cutter one. I think everyone got a couple of years ago. It now speaks that if you come to me, bring your checkbook because I'm not cheap. Oddly enough, I thought I was going to have rioting in the streets. Nobody cared. My contact lenses cost more than any place else. I've thrown away a lot of the conventions that are in this industry and are dominating this industry. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, and this is part I think the frustration I was having a few years ago and why I was coming to a crossroads of going, I don't know, and doubting myself, was that I had ideas, but I didn't know how to implement. I now have ideas, and I just do it.
You go. Picking up on that theme just a little tiny bit more, I tend to kind of push the boundaries a little bit myself and kind of try new things. Of course, that doesn't always work. Tell us a little bit about balancing, I'm just going to go for it and do it, versus having to pay the bills.
Yeah. So there was a moment in this process that I was like, you know what? The heck with the office. I'm just going to make frames. And it was pointed out to me very quickly that, whoa. The office pays bills. The office gives you the conduit and the outlet to do the thing. So I was throttled back on that one. I've had ideas for frames that simply failed. And I had to go back to the client and say, we have to redesign because I'm not capable of doing this.
Right.
And there have also been things that I've gotten myself into. Like if somebody goes to my website today, there's a piece that is a Cubs-based frame. Okay. That frame took almost a year to process. The gentleman knew it was going to be a commitment of time when we got into it. But there are elements that you simply can't do by hand. So I have a small 3-axis CNC machine that there are things on that frame that can only be done with that. My initial setup for my shop didn't work. I almost hurt myself, looking for holes. So yeah, you try. If it works, you try and you measure is what is the key. You try, you measure. You try. I raised the pricing of my lenses. I waited for pushback. I didn't see it. I pushed it up again. Waited for pushback. Nope. Can we go a little bit further? Yes. Okay. Now let's come back. Okay. We try, we measure. We try, we measure. And you have to do that again and again. And you have to do that even in the skill set.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You push, you push, you push. Sometimes the material talks back and it says, I'm not doing this. So you have to be willing to try, but you have to be willing to fail. Okay. And I think that's part of it. When I say, I'm just going to do it is, well, I'm not going to run into the fire.
Balanced. Yeah.
I'm obviously looking at things. I'm measuring. I'm consciously aware of what's going on.
Right.
And I'm looking for openings. So that's really it. The low-hanging fruit is what I would say to people. Anyone who came to me and said, how do I do this? Look for low-hanging fruit. What in your office can you make little tiny adjustments to that are going to affect either you as the person or the bottom line? Hopefully both.
Yeah. And it just touches on what I always go on about, guys, when we're doing this kind of stuff is, stop, think, look at what you're doing, feel it out, and try. You don't get anywhere if you don't try. You earned your stripes the hard way. You're a great optician. You got all your certifications. You built a business. You can do this amazing stuff by hand. You went to France. Things are looking pretty good. Where do you see the big picture of we'll keep it within the realm of opticianry, shall we say. What do you see the next 5, 10, 15 years in your crystal ball?
So right now, I've realized that it's hard for a lot of people to just go off my piece of paper and build and let me just create something. So now I'm creating a framelit. And initially it'll only be in my office. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're going to try things, we're gonna measure things, and we're gonna adjust. And we're gonna do this again and again and again. My next thing is that I want to be able to go to other offices and say, hey, I have this concept. I will, if you have somebody who walks in and says, but I'm looking for whatever, if you call me, I'm willing to have the conversation with you. Gotcha. And I can bring this skill set to your office. I am not here to poach your clients. Right. I am simply the consultant that's been brought in, or I'm not. Maybe there's very possibly, and we're still working this concept out. It's very possible that you, as the optician or store owner, we have the relationship. You have the relationship with the client. Exactly. I'm not part of that. Okay. And so I think most people probably feel most comfortable with that. It's coming down to that idea and saying, if you can put it on a piece of paper and sketch it out. And I think a lot of opticians want to be able to do this. They like the idea.
I keep hoping. Yeah.
I'd love to be able to sit there and take the workshop that we did, and maybe in 7 or 8 years, if there's demand, to sit there and say, hey, let's all meet up at this space. Maybe it's at an expo, and we'll have everything here for you. You bring you. All the equipment is here, and we're going to do one day intensive, submersive workshop. And at the end of it, you're going to walk out with a frame. But I'll give you the skill set. And by the way, here's a list of all suppliers. So you're not so that the next guy, and this is, I think this is a big part of me, and I think it's part of yourself too. Part of the reason, the thing that drives me, is partially legacy. It's leaving the world better than I found it. And even if it's just this little pocket called opticianry, if I can sit there and say, okay, but I've found a path forward. Okay, I found it in some of the most obscure part of the world, in this little mountain village. I've come back to the U.S. and there's a post on social media where I mentioned this, saying, look, I have a path. Not everyone can follow me, but those who do, I have an idea. And I know it's working in my little corner of the world, and I think it can work in other parts of the world. Yeah. And if more people are doing this, there's more demand. there's more interest, and suddenly we've raised the water, and all the boats.
Yeah, eventually you have a guild of your own here in the U.S.
We have a U.S. guild.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, we so hope that there are other people that are interested in this. We see a little bit of interest on social media, not quite enough. Again, that's how we connected. People wanted to get in touch with you. CountEyewear.com. They could go there.
They can go there. Okay. There's a CountEyewear.com. On one of the pages, there's a contact us. Just fill it out. Tell me what you're thinking. What are you looking for? If we get enough of those, then we can go to the next step, which is I have this many people who want to do a workshop. Can we get sponsorship somewhere?
Absolutely. That's my next thought.
Yes. I'm sure even with sponsorship, there's going to be everyone's going to have to pay something in to the pot.
To
cover the cost of this.
A lot of cost involved with this. Like I said that just my little basic workshop was hundreds of dollars, and this stuff is not cheap. The acetate sheet, that kind of stuff.
Education is investment.
Absolutely.
Monetary and it pays back. Yeah. So but that's part of your mission.
That's it. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate everything that you've done. You came all the way down here from Chicago to South Carolina in the summer. Imagine that. I just cannot thank you enough for everything you've done last couple of days for us.
It was a lot of fun putting this together for you. Although, John, we've come this far now. These are your frames.
Got to put them on?
You got to put them on. We got to show everybody the final product.
Go. Well, almost final.
Almost.
I have a few hours left here, but here we go.